I own my house. Let me start there because that fact is going to matter a lot. I bought it 11 years before I married Jillian. Paid it off myself. My name, my deed. Jillian moved in after the wedding and never contributed a single payment toward the property because, according to her and her mother Esther, a wife shouldn't have to pay rent in her own home. I let that slide for 22 years. 22 years of covering the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, the roof replacement in 2019, the plumbing disaster in 2021. Jillian handled groceries and some utilities. That was the deal, and I never once threw it in her face. Some background. Esther never approved of me. I grew up in public housing. My parents worked manual labor their whole lives. I put myself through trade school and built a contracting operation over 15 years. By the time I met Jillian, I was doing well, but Esther always saw me as someone beneath her daughter. Jillian's father, Bradford, was more subtle. He never insulted me directly, but had this habit of talking past me at family events, asking Jillian questions about my business like I wasn't sitting right there. Their son, Lachlan, was the golden child. Good school, commercial real estate, and the entire family orbited around him. Every holiday, every birthday was basically a celebration of Lachlan. I was furniture. My daughter Beth was the only one who made me feel like I belonged. She was 17 at the time, and the one person who actually asked what I wanted for my birthday. My son was different. I'm leaving his name out for now because what he did still makes me too angry. About 3 weeks before my 50th, Jillian started dropping hints. Something big is coming. You're going to love it. Every time I asked, she told me to be patient, that the whole family had been planning for months. Esther called me twice that week, which was unusual because she barely spoke to me at events, and both times mentioned how excited everyone was. Bradford texted me a thumbs up with the words, "The big day." Even Lachlan, who hadn't initiated a conversation with me in 3 years, sent a message saying he hoped I was ready. I was genuinely looking forward to it. I don't ask for much. I don't need expensive gifts or surprises. But when your entire family spends 3 weeks building up your birthday like it's going to be the best day of your life, you start to believe them. You start to feel like maybe after 2 decades of being background noise, they finally decided to show up for you. My birthday was a Thursday. I took the day off because Jillian suggested it. She told me to come home around noon. Everything would be ready. I stopped to pick up a nice bottle of something thinking we'd share it. Pulled into my driveway at 12:15. House was dark, door locked, nobody home, no decorations, no food, no people. Called Jillian, straight to voicemail. Called my son, same thing. Called Beth, and she picked up on the 4th ring, sounded confused, said she thought I was supposed to be at work and that mom told her the party was Saturday. Then she went quiet and said she'd call me back. I sat in my kitchen for about 4 hours. I'm not going to describe what that was like because I don't think I need to. 4 hours alone, on your 50th in a house you paid for. Around 4 p.m., a notification popped up. Someone from trade school had commented on a photo and tagged me. I opened it and there was Jillian, my son, Esther, Bradford, and Lachlan. All of them at a beach resort 6 hours south. Matching outfits, professional photographer. My son's caption read, "LOL, he won't even notice we're gone." Esther commented a laughing emoji. Jillian liked it. I stared at that photo for a long time, and what I did next is what this post is really about. I didn't comment. I didn't call. I didn't send a single message. I sat there and started thinking about the house, the finances. Every single thing my name was on, every single thing their lives depended on, that ran through me. Because here's what Jillian and her family never understood about me. I'm not the kind of man who yells or makes a scene. I'm the kind of man who builds things, and I know exactly how to take them apart. Beth called around 9 p.m. She was furious. She had no idea about the resort trip. Jillian told her the party was Saturday, and she'd stayed at a friend's house to study for exams. She found out from a cousin who saw the photo. My 17-year-old daughter was the only person in my family who wasn't in on it, and she was more angry than I was. Or at least more visibly, because by that point I wasn't angry anymore. I was planning. I need to stop here because the next part involves what I actually did, and I want to lay it out properly. But I'll say this, that photo had 43 likes when I first saw it. By the time they came home 3 days later, I had already made 5 phone calls that none of them knew about. Those 5 calls are the reason my WhatsApp eventually blew up, with 47 messages from people who spent my birthday laughing at me on a beach. More soon. Man, this guy spent 22 years being the foundation of a building that nobody even bothered to look at. He's literally the load-bearing wall of this entire family's lifestyle, and they treated him like drywall. And the thing that gets me is how calculated this was. This wasn't them forgetting his birthday. You don't forget something you spent 3 weeks hyping up. Esther called him twice. Bradford sent a text. Lachlan broke a 3-year silence. They built this man's hopes up like a Jenga tower just so they could watch it collapse from a beach resort in matching outfits. Matching outfits. They coordinated wardrobes but couldn't coordinate a single phone call on his actual birthday. And his own son. LOL, he won't even notice we're gone. That's not a joke, that's a confession. That's the whole family telling you exactly where you rank, and the answer is, you don't. You're not even on the list. You're the guy who pays for the list to exist. But here's where this man becomes genuinely terrifying in the most beautiful way. He went quiet. No explosion, no angry texts, no scene. Just silence and a calculator. 22 years of being treated like an ATM with legs, and this man's response to the worst betrayal of his life was to sit down and do math. That's not rage. That's an engineer looking at a structure and deciding which bolt to pull first. Update 1. All right, I'm back. A lot of you asked about the 5 phone calls and what happened when they came home. I'm going to cover both, but I need to give you some context first because the calls don't make sense without it. When I said I own the house, I meant that legally it is entirely mine. But what I didn't mention in the first post is that over the years, Jillian's family basically attached themselves to my property like it was communal. Lachlan stored 2 vehicles on my land, a work truck and a trailer he used for his real estate staging business because he didn't want to pay for commercial storage. He'd been doing this for about 4 years and never paid me a dime for it. Esther and Bradford had been using my detached garage as overflow storage since they downsized to a smaller place 3 years ago. Furniture, boxes, seasonal decorations, Bradford's tool collection, all sitting in my garage rent-free. And Jillian had added her mother as an authorized user on 2 of my store credit accounts years ago without asking me. I found out when I pulled my credit report during the kitchen renovation. Esther had been running up charges for home goods, and I'd been paying the minimums without realizing half the balance wasn't even ours. So those 5 phone calls. Thursday night, while they were still at the resort posting beach photos, I called my attorney. Not a divorce attorney, not yet. My property attorney. The same guy who handled my deed. I told him I wanted formal written notice prepared for Lachlan to remove his vehicles from my property within 14 days, or I'd have them towed at his expense. Second call was to a locksmith. I had every lock on the house and the garage rekeyed on Friday morning. Third call was to the credit card companies to remove Esther as an authorized user and freeze both accounts pending a fraud review of her charges. Fourth call was to my accountant. I wanted a full accounting of every dollar I'd spent on the house versus what Jillian had contributed over 22 years, documented and time-stamped. Fifth call was to Beth. I told her she was welcome at the house anytime and that nothing I was about to do was aimed at her. Now here's where things got complicated. They came back on Sunday. Jillian walked in first and immediately noticed the locks were different because her key didn't work. She had to ring the doorbell of her own home, except it's not her home. It's mine. I let her in, and she started with the performance right away, telling me the resort trip was my surprise, that they'd planned to fly me down on Friday as part of the big reveal, but I'd ruined it by taking the day off early. I asked her why nobody called me, why nobody answered their phones for 4 hours, why my son posted what he posted. She told me I was overreacting, that the caption was a joke, that I needed to learn to take things less seriously. I told her about the locks. I told her about the credit accounts. I told her about the tow notice for Lachlan's vehicles. And for the first time in 22 years, I watched Jillian actually panic. Not because she cared about my feelings, but because I had touched something she understood, which was the infrastructure. The free storage, the free credit, the free house. She started calling Esther immediately, and within an hour, both Esther and Bradford were at my front door demanding to know why their garage access was revoked. Bradford tried the reasonable approach, told me this was a misunderstanding, that family doesn't charge family for storage, that I was letting one bad weekend ruin years of a good relationship. I asked him to name one birthday of mine he'd attended in the last decade. He couldn't. I asked him to name one time he'd spoken directly to me at a family dinner instead of speaking about me to Jillian. He got quiet. Then Esther took over, and that's when things really escalated because Esther's approach was not reasonable at all. She told me I'd always had a chip on my shoulder, that I'd never been grateful enough for being accepted into their family, that a man from my background should appreciate what he has instead of making threats over a birthday party. I told Esther she had 30 days to collect her belongings from my garage or I'd donate them. And I told her that every dollar she'd charged to my credit accounts was being reviewed and that if she didn't arrange repayment, I'd pursue it formally. She called me vindictive. She told Jillian to take the kids and come stay with her. Jillian looked at me like she expected me to back down, to say I was sorry, to admit I'd gone too far. I didn't say anything. What none of them knew yet was that Lachlan's vehicles weren't just parked on my property. His staging trailer contained inventory that belonged to clients, not to him. And the 14-day tow notice I'd sent through my attorney meant he either had to scramble to find commercial storage in 2 weeks or explain to his clients why their furniture was sitting in a residential driveway. That call from Lachlan came Monday morning, and it was not the calm, dismissive Lachlan I'd known for 20 years. But that confrontation, plus what my son did next, is for the next update. Because what my son posted on social media the day after they got home made the original birthday photo look like nothing. Every single move this man made was legal, documented, and devastating. He didn't slash tires. He didn't throw anyone's stuff on the lawn. He called an attorney, a locksmith, an accountant, and the credit card company. 4 professionals and his daughter. That's the lineup of a man who knows the difference between revenge and accountability. And Jillian's excuse, "Oh, we were going to fly you out on Friday." Absolutely incredible. So your birthday surprise was to abandon you on your birthday, let your son mock you publicly, not answer your calls for 4 hours, and then supposedly surprise you the next day. That's not a plan. That's a cover story they workshopped in the car ride home. But the part that really reveals everything is what made Jillian panic. It wasn't, "Oh no, my husband is hurt." It was, "Oh no, my husband touched the free stuff. The locks, the credit, the storage." That got a reaction. 22 years of emotional neglect? Nothing. Threatened the free garage space? Emergency family meeting at the front door within an hour. And Esther, a man from your background should appreciate what he has. Ma'am, what he has is a house that you've been using as a free storage unit while running up $9,000 on his credit cards. The audacity of looking down on someone whose floor you're literally standing on rent-free is Olympic-level delusion. Bradford asking him not to let one bad weekend ruin things is wild too, because it wasn't one bad weekend. It was one bad weekend that finally made this man audit the last 20 bad years. Update 2. Shout out to the commenter who said I should check what else my name was covering for these people. You're a genius, and you'll see why in a minute. Left off with Lachlan's Monday call and what my son did on social media. Starting with my son because that blew up faster. Day after they got back, my son posted again. A video compilation from the trip with text overlays. One slide said, "Best family vacation ever, no negativity allowed." And another said, "When the vibe is better without certain people." He didn't name me, but everyone who knew our family understood. Beth screenshotted everything and sent it to me before I even saw it. Jillian was still in the house trying to convince me to reverse the credit freeze and give Esther back the garage access. She rotated between acting like everything could be fixed if I calmed down and trying to guilt me for embarrassing her family. I asked her about the video. She told me he was just being a kid, that social media is how young people communicate. He was 23. I told Jillian I wanted to talk to him directly. She tried to set conditions, wanted to be present so things didn't get out of hand. I told her I wasn't negotiating the terms of speaking to my own son. He came Tuesday afternoon and sat at my kitchen table like he was doing me a favor. He told me the trip was Jillian's idea. Esther funded it. He just went along because it was free. I asked about the caption. He said it was a joke and I was being sensitive. Asked about the video. Same answer, just content. Nobody takes it seriously. So I told him something he didn't know. The 2017 Subaru he drove was in my name. Insurance was on my policy. The monthly payment he thought Jillian covered actually came from an auto draft on my checking account that Jillian set up 3 years ago without telling me. He had no idea. I told him I was canceling the insurance and stopping the draft at the end of the week, and he had 5 days to figure out his own arrangement. His face changed completely because for the first time, he realized the man he'd been mocking online was the same man keeping his car on the road. Now Lachlan. This is where things got really messy. Lachlan called Monday morning, not angry at me for the tow notice, but angry at Jillian for not warning him I was upset. That told me everything about how this family worked. His first instinct wasn't to apologize. It was to blame someone for not managing me. He told me I was being unreasonable. The vehicles had been there for years. Pulling this over. A birthday was pathetic. I let him talk. Then, I told him he had 12 days left and every day the trailer sat past the deadline. I'd be billing his staging business a daily storage rate through my attorney. What Lachlan didn't realize was that the furniture in that trailer belonged to his clients, not him. If the trailer got towed, that inventory became his liability. And if clients found out their furniture was on a residential lot with no commercial insurance coverage, he'd have a much bigger problem than a parking spot. I didn't say any of that. He figured it out by Wednesday because that's when he showed up with Bradford. For the first time in 20 years, Bradford spoke to me directly. Not through Jillian, not past me, to me. And what he said was that I was destroying this family over my own ego. I told him this family had been using me as a wallet and storage facility for 2 decades, and not one of them could pick up the phone on my 50th birthday. I told him I had a full accounting showing how much money had flowed from me to his family. Bradford tried to pivot, said family isn't about accounting, that keeping score is toxic. I told him funny how nobody called it toxic when they were on the receiving end. Meanwhile, Jillian was working on Beth. This made me angriest of all. She started telling Beth I was having some kind of breakdown, that this wasn't normal, that Beth needed to talk sense into me. Beth told me about every one of these conversations. Jillian was trying to turn my only ally against me using my daughter's love as the tool. That's when I made the decision I'd been sitting on since Thursday. I contacted a divorce attorney, not to file yet, but to understand what I was entitled to keep and what exposure I had. By this point, Jillian, Esther, Bradford, and Lachlan had all made clear they had zero intention of acknowledging what they did. Their only strategy was pressuring me to back down. My WhatsApp exploded the following day. 47 messages. But what triggered that flood wasn't what you think, and I'll cover it in the final update. Lachlan calling Jillian to yell at her for not managing her husband's emotions properly, so that one detail tells you everything you will ever need to know about this family's operating system. This man was never a person to them. He was a resource. And Jillian was the account manager. Her job wasn't to be his wife, it was to keep the resource compliant and the benefits flowing. The moment the resource stopped cooperating, Lachlan didn't call the resource. He called the manager to file a complaint. And the son sitting at that kitchen table saying it was just content, nobody takes it seriously, while driving a car he didn't know his father was paying for. That's a level of obliviousness that could only come from never once having to wonder where things come from. He's been living inside his father's generosity like a fish lives in water. Doesn't even know it's there until someone drains the tank. 5 days to figure out your own car situation. Beautiful. And Bradford. Family isn't about accounting. Keeping score is toxic. Brother, you're the one who's been keeping score. You've been scoring free garage space, free storage, free credit, free invisibility of the man funding all of it. You just didn't realize the other side of the ledger existed because nobody was reading it back to you. Until now. And Jillian trying to weaponize Beth, trying to convince a 17-year-old that her father is having a mental breakdown because he stopped being a doormat. That's not parenting. That's recruiting a spy. That's using your child as emotional leverage because you've run out of adults who'll carry your water. Final update. Last one. The 47 messages and everything after them happened within about 10 days. Lachlan had 12 days to move his trailer. On day 11, he still hadn't found storage because affordable staging space in our area has a wait list. He came to me, and for the first time ever, wasn't dismissive. He offered to pay a monthly rate. I said no. He offered to pay retroactively for 4 years of free use. I said no. He asked what I wanted, and I told him I wanted the trailer gone by midnight on day 14. And I wanted him to look me in the face and tell me whether he'd ever once considered me family or just convenient. He didn't answer. He moved the trailer on day 13 by renting an emergency lot at 3 times the going rate. 2 clients called asking why their furniture was being relocated. He lost one of them. The 47 messages. Here's what triggered them. The Friday after everything started, I filed for divorce. Jillian didn't know until she was served at Esther's house the following Wednesday. She'd moved out the weekend before. Not because I asked, but because Esther convinced her that leaving would make me look bad in proceedings. What Esther didn't account for was that the house was mine before the marriage, maintained exclusively with my income, and Jillian had almost no claim to it. My attorney confirmed this within 48 hours. When Jillian got served, she called Beth, not me. Told Beth I was abandoning the family, choosing anger over my children, that Beth should come to Esther's because the house wouldn't be stable. Beth called me right after and told me everything. She said she wasn't going anywhere. 17, old enough to make that choice and old enough to tell a court the same. That is when WhatsApp exploded. 47 messages in 6 hours. Jillian sent 19, ranging from, "Can we talk to you're making the biggest mistake of your life," to "She was sorry the birthday happened but it didn't justify this." Esther sent 11, calling me cruel and selfish, plus 3 messages claiming Bradford knew people in real estate law, which was almost funny. Bradford sent 4, all let's sit down like adults. Lachlan sent 2, asking me to think about what this was doing to his sister. My son sent 11. Those got to me. Not because they were apologetic. They weren't. Everyone was angry. He told me I was pathetic, doing this for attention, that I'd always been jealous of Jillian's family. The last message said the birthday trip was the best time they'd had as a family in years, and that says everything about what I bring to the table. I didn't respond to a single one, but I did other things. My attorney sent Esther a formal demand letter for repayment of every charge she'd made on my credit accounts as unauthorized user. Just over $9,000 across 2 years. 60 days to repay or I'd file in small claims. Esther, who spent 2 decades looking down on the man from public housing, was now staring at a legal demand from that same man and couldn't dismiss it because every charge was documented with her name on it. I canceled the insurance and auto draft on my son's car that Friday. He found out when he got pulled over Monday for expired insurance and had to call Jillian for a ride. She had to borrow Bradford's car because hers was still registered at my address and she didn't want to come get it during the divorce. The man he mocked online was the one who'd been keeping his car on the road. Beth stayed with me through all of it. We reorganized the garage after Esther's things were collected, had dinner together most nights. She told me she'd spent years watching them treat me like I was invisible and never understood why I allowed it. I told her I'd been asking myself the same thing. The divorce is processing. Jillian's attorney tried to argue she deserved a share of the home's appreciated value, but my attorney shut it down with documentation of exclusive financial contribution. Esther hasn't paid $1 of the $9,000. Lachlan pays triple for storage. My son hasn't apologized, and I don't expect him to. Bradford came to the house once more alone, asked if there was any version where things went back to how they were. I told him things were exactly how they'd always been. The only difference was I stopped pretending not to notice. 43 likes on that birthday photo. Every person in it is now dealing with the consequences of thinking I wouldn't notice they were gone. I noticed. I wanted him to look me in the face and tell me whether he'd ever once considered me family or just convenient. And Lachlan didn't answer. He literally could not bring himself to lie and say yes. That silence is louder than every single one of those 47 WhatsApp messages combined. Because you know what's in those 47 messages? Not a single apology. 19 from Jillian, and the closest she gets is, "Sorry the birthday happened." Not sorry for what she did, sorry the birthday existed, like it was a weather event that unfortunately occurred. Esther threatening him with Bradford's real estate law connections. "Ma'am, you owe this man $9,000 documented dollars. Maybe sit this round out." And the son? 11 messages, all anger, zero self-awareness, calling his father pathetic for wanting attention on his own birthday while driving a car his father secretly paid for until he got pulled over and reality showed up with a badge and flashing lights. That's not karma. That's a lesson plan. But I gotta be real for a second. The line that wrecked me was Beth saying she'd spent years watching them treat him like he was invisible and never understood why he allowed it. Because that means a child saw what every adult in this family refused to see. A teenager had more emotional clarity than 4 grown adults, a mother-in-law, a father-in-law, a brother-in-law, and a wife of 22 years. They all had front-row seats to this man's loneliness and chose to keep watching the show. And his answer to Bradford: things were exactly how they'd always been. The only difference was I stopped pretending not to notice. That's not a comeback. That's an autopsy report. He's not blowing up the family. He's just turning the lights on in a room that was always this ugly. They just preferred the dark because the dark was free.